Well, hello, everybody. Thank you so much for taking some time to spend with me today. I'm Dr. Randi Ross of Premier Practice Consultants, and let's give a little bit of a shout out to ChiroSecure for always hosting these events. It's so important that everybody stays connected to things that are really valuable to building our business. So today, what I'm going to talk about is giving you a few things to think about as far as selling your practice. And a lot of people are saying, well, I'm first in practice, or I'm only here 5 years or 10 years, not something that's really important or valuable to me. But what I'm going to share with you really kind of changes that mindset and gives you a little bit of a shift, because whether you think you're going to sell your practice now in a year, 10 years, or 20 years, there's things that you can be doing that you can really hopefully protect getting the most value out of the sale of your practice when the time is right. So one of the things, we find a lot of things that people do wrong, and I'm going to hopefully get you to correct some of those things. And this is always coming from the mindset of you're a business owner, you're a business entity, and there are certain things that you should always be doing to keep your business positioned properly. We call it always being market ready. And unfortunately, sometimes what does happen is people are not thinking about selling. It's not something that is really, on your radar for the near future. But unfortunately, sometimes things happen. And sometimes people get injured or hurt. You can get sick. And obviously, the worst is, unfortunately, sometimes people suddenly pass away. So always knowing what the value is of your business at any given time and being prepared, and that's what I'm going to share a little bit of today with you, is really so important. So take some notes here, and hopefully you'll get yourself in that better position by the time we're finished here today. So one of the things that we notice often is people often don't have their, what I call their business finances, really up to date and current at all times. And it goes beyond a tax return. Obviously, all of you as business owners, file a tax return. And hopefully most or many of you have P&Ls, or what we call profit and loss statements. Those are important to keep up to date, not only yearly, but even as each quarter evolves. You should really make sure that you're going to your accountant and you're keeping all those things up to date. And don't skimp on that. Having a good accountant is invaluable, and they can really help you keep a lot of these financial documents kind of current and available when and if they're ever needed. Certain other pieces of, I consider it under the umbrella of financial is, your equipment and what is your equipment worth. And a lot of times people have trouble understanding that. What is the actual value of my equipment? I have a table that's 2 years old in one room, and I have, a high-low with drops that's 10 years old in another room. What is the actual value? And really understanding the real-time value of your assets is something that you should really keep, again, up to date. Take the time to update that every year and keep it current. And don't overvalue things, because that's never going to serve you. Typically, this is another thing that your accountant can help you with, because they're doing all those taking depreciations and stuff as time goes by. So that's important to keep up to date as well. The other thing that people often struggle with, that's an important part of really keeping everything current for your practice, whether you're selling this year, 5 years, 10 years, whatever it might be, is understanding your overhead. I have to tell you, I talk to many doctors every week, and one of the biggest challenges is really understanding what it costs them to run their business. Big challenge for a lot of people. And I think probably one of the biggest pieces of that puzzle is often, as small business owners, you are legally allowed to write off certain things that might actually fall under the umbrella of personal information or personal finances. But as a small business owner, you can write those off as a deduction. What happens is they make you look like you have less profit, which then you don't pay as much taxes. But when you have to go to sell your practice, that has the flip effect. One, you've now lowered the profit that your business makes, and two, you've increased your overhead. So having what I call a real time expense of what it costs to run your business, again, something just for you, is so important. A, to understand, and B, to really have that as an accurate, up-to-date, real-time list. And it often changes. It can be a moving target. So that's something you should really explore from time to time. And that kind of, encompasses when we talk about, again, what I say, having your practice market ready at any given time, these are important pieces of financial information. And then, of course, there's all the stats that I don't have to teach you guys, the new patients and the office visits and, the breakdown of your different services. And all those things are important to keep updated. And you should understand those. As the business owner, this should not be pieces of information that, only an office manager or someone else understands. You should be reviewing it and be able to kind of reproduce that information if and when it's ever needed. It's a good idea to keep all of this somewhere. As I said, unfortunately, we get calls frequently, more frequently than I would like, from a family member or, a CA, that someone suddenly passed away and they have no idea where anything is. And just like you're prepared when you have a will or anything attached to an estate that people know what to do if something happens, your business should have the same type of respect, that people know what to do if something happens to you, and we're not, floundering and have to become investigators to figure out exactly what your business was doing and where that information is that a potential buyer would need to do their due diligence on to see if this is something that they want to do. And it really has a huge impact on the families when this is all organized and in order. Your staff. When you're selling your practice, one of the variables is staff that's well trained and tenured in place. Yes, there are some times where people want to bring their own staff and team members, but more often than not, I'll say probably 90% of the time, they actually want your staff to stay on board, to be excited about a new buyer and the potential that goes with that, new energy that comes in. And the buyer wants them to stay on board. They know the way the practice has been running. They're skilled and proficient in that. They know the patients. And we actually, when we do a transition in an acquisition, we have a specific training just for how to introduce the staff to an incoming doctor and what they should and shouldn't be saying. So staff are really valuable. So keep your staff well trained and understanding the different parts of your business, and making sure that there is a way for them to, I'm trying to think the right way to say this, almost kind of seamlessly, continue to do their services with someone else that might be the owner or take over the practice. So keeping your staff up to date, keeping them trained, keeping them motivated, these are all things that really are so valuable when we're continually positioning our business. Obviously, it helps you when you are there as well. One of the other things that is really important that seems to be lost on a lot of people is what I call the aesthetics of your office. And these really need to be updated today. I would say anywhere between every 5 to 7 years. It doesn't have to be a huge expense, but aesthetics change. Just like if you own a home, if you were going to sell your home and it hadn't been updated in 10 years, chances are you're going to put a coat of paint on there. You might even upgrade, the countertops in your kitchen and your bathrooms. You might do a whole refurbish. Well, your practice has the same type of element in there. And too often we see practices that have not been updated in not only 5 to 7 years, but some of them decades. And you have, green walls and brown chairs and, a dark gray carpet. And does it function for you? Does it impact your business? Probably not. Maybe there are some people that are a little turned off by that, but I can tell you when it comes time to sell your practice, aesthetics today more than ever are really important. And buyers are often looking for what I call the new model of healthcare offices, and they're a little bit spa-like, or more of your waiting area being more of a living room feeling. We're getting away from that very sterile type of systematic chairs in a row, coffee table with some magazines thrown on it. We really have gotten away from that, and there's some great designers in our industry that really do amazing things. And if you don't have a budget for that, any of your local decorating stores will often be there to help you out as what are the colors that are being used now, what types of furniture are, more aesthetically pleasing and comfortable to people. And I can tell you, this is probably one of the biggest kind of pushbacks we get when someone goes to actually visit a practice that we're selling, is they often come back and say, that practice needs a facelift really bad. Practice isn't bad, it's making money, and sometimes that's someone's position. Well, why should I invest, $5, $10, $15,000 in updating or facelifting my office? I'm making money. Well, because in today's environment, it's something that has become an important piece to the puzzle of when you're going to sell your practice. So, and also minimize the personal touch in your office. Sometimes we see practices that are so personal and so individual. And again, I'll kind of relate that back to real estate. Often when a realtor comes in, they'll have you minimize how much, personal things are on the walls or, displayed out, in the area. Obviously, if there's, something that you're attached to in the community and you received awards or things like that, that's fine. But sometimes people go too far. And if there's something that they have a passion for, they kind of flood their office with that. And that's really a turnoff to a buyer. And can sometimes even be a bit of a turnoff to new patients as they walk in. It's kind of like, whoa, it's almost like, an overwhelming amount of neurological information coming in. So we say if it's a fresh coat of paint, and carpeting, if that's the bare minimum you do, or flooring. Most places aren't even using carpeting anymore. They're using various kinds of flooring, whether they're kind of a vinyl or tile, or different types of materials, depending upon where you are, might be the different types of materials that you use. So when I was in practice, we carpeted our offices. Today that's not the style. That's not the aesthetic. And it's definitely something that's very important for you to be on top of. I don't care if you're in practice 2 years or 40 years, you should always be putting your best foot forward of how your practice looks. And it does have an impact on patients, and they do talk about that. And when you are ready to sell, whether by choice or not, I want someone to walk into your office and be like, wow, this is a nice practice, before they've looked at anything else. Just looking at, again, the overall aesthetic of, when they walk in, what does it look like? So that's a really important thing to stay on top of. We have a lot of people that we have a challenging conversation with about that. But if you're doing it on a regular basis, then it's not a challenge to you. It's just a part of anything else that you do. You upgrade computers. You might change, to a better software program. This should be part of that same mindset. It's time for me to update my practice. And one of the last things that I want to talk about, and it kind of pulls all of this together, is, always being prepared. You heard me talk about that a few moments ago. And I think often, most of us think nothing's ever going to happen to us, or, I'm definitely not going to sell for another decade and I don't have to worry about these things. But, you know, that's not a good way to run a business. And any successful business has different plans in place. One of the plans they have in place, even if they're young in that business, is some type of exit strategy. And that's a little bit about what I'm talking about today. Is you should always have a plan, because again, sometimes life happens and our exit strategy is forced upon us. One of the best ways to really have a feel for, okay, what is my practice worth today? And then staying on top of that. And it works in a couple of ways. One, it gives you that what we call valuation report to really understand, what my practice is worth. Because, some of us are often a little surprised upon presenting a valuation that maybe the practice isn't worth as much as they would thought. Sometimes it worked as they thought. Sometimes it works the other way. But what that also does is it's another tool to give you a guide as to where do I need to go. I'm here, I want to be here. What are some of the things that I need to do to get there? And often people think, well, I do stats, that gives me all the information I need. And I'm here to tell you, it's a different model of evaluating your business. So one of the things that we're going to offer here, I know our website is up there. And the easier one is just volumepractice.com. And if you want to go to, when you land on the home page, there's a little blue button that says intake. It asks you a couple of questions. And then there's a code that you can put in on the bottom. And if you just put May 2021 in the code, we're going to actually give you 25% off for being here on the ChiroSecure call today. And it's a great tool for you to understand the current market value of your practice, as well as a good look at what do I need to do, or what would I like to do? What profit centers can I add to increase this value in the next 5 years when I'm going to most likely be looking at retiring? So it really is a valuable tool. We have our clients update them every year so that you really always know what's going on. Well, that's it for me for today. I hope that I got you thinking a little bit differently about the ultimate sale of your practice, whether it's now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. At some point, you're going to take, this thing that you birthed over many years and gave your blood, sweat, and tears to, and want to recoup that value, whether it's to invest in another business or practice, or ultimately retire for your family. And there's a lot of great tools, some of which we've shared here today, that can be useful to you as far as staying on track and hoping that you get the most that you can for your practice when that time comes to sell. Well, I'm Dr. Randi Ross. You could always reach out to me if you have any questions about what we talked about here today. Go to our website, put in that code May 2021, and we'll give you a 25% off evaluation report. And again, give you that good picture of what's going on in your practice today.
Join us each week as we bring you the best in business growth, practice management, social media marketing, networking, leadership, and lots more. If it's about women in practice and business, you'll hear it here. We hope you enjoyed this week's Facebook Live event. Please like us on Facebook, comment, and share. We look forward to seeing all of you next week for another episode of Empowering Women in Chiropractic. Now, go ahead and hit the share button and tell your friends and colleagues about the show. Thank you for watching. Have a beautiful day. This has been a ChiroSecure production.